Hi, I'm Michael Killen. My guest is Paula Kirkeby. She's an institution, a legend in the Palo Alto community, and certainly beyond. And I tend to think she has probably done more for the development of art in this area than anyone else I know. And Paula, how are you tonight?
Good, great.
Thank you for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure.
And you really twisted my arm to...
Oh, yeah, right.
I twisted your arm.
Well, it worked.
Paula, I asked a few people what they thought of you. Because you and I just met relatively recently, although your fame and accomplishments are fairly well known. For example, a fellow named Jerry Emanuel. Do you know Jerry?
Very well.
He is on the board of the important Peninsula Museum of Art in Burlingame.
That's right.
He sent me this note. Paula Kirkeby's studio is internationally respected, encouraging museum-quality monotypes and monoprints by high-quality artists. Her knowledge of contemporary art is astonishing. Her spirit and enthusiasm touches all who know her.
Wow.
Wow.
I'd like to meet her.
Is Jerry a man?
Yes, it's a guy. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
it's you.
known him
Of
for
course.
a long time. Yeah.
I really thought that was
Wow, fantastic.
it was
Yeah.
very easy to get that quote. And
Oh.
now somebody else sent me a quote about you.
You've been busy, yeah.
Well, this makes my job here easy. Cornelia Pendleton.
Yeah.
She is the Chief Financial Officer of University Art, a chain of art stores that goes all the way up to Sacramento.
Right.
She wrote this: Paula's contribution to the art and arts in our community, nationally and internationally, is extensive and invaluable. We have been lucky that she has lent her talent and expertise in art as she served on local commissions and art organizations boards in this area. We are lucky.
Wow.
It's pretty heavy.
I think that's what one does when one lives in a community.
So I want to start by putting you into perspective for those people who aren't familiar with you, and I'm sure collectors of fine art around the world, many of them, or some number of them, know who you are. You founded Smith Andersen Editions.
Yes. And it was Smith Andersen Gallery and Smith Andersen Editions. But primarily it was a gallery that existed in the corner of Homer and Emerson Streets in Palo Alto. It opened officially in 1969.
Yeah.
But I had been working with artists, and I grew up with most of the artists that I initially showed.
Like who?
Well, I was particularly interested in a group of artists called the Cobra Movement. And they were a group from Copenhagen, Brussels, and Amsterdam. And I was drawn to them because it was very abstract.
Were you here in the United States when you were drawn to them?
I was in the United States, and I had gone to Amsterdam when I was very young. And I saw them, and I thought I had just died and gone to heaven. So I decided I would collect their work. That's what I was. So I started collecting, buying whatever I could afford, and that's what I did. And then I got to know some of them and worked with one of them at my press. By the time I had the press up and running, most of them were gone.
What were you doing with them and the press? How does the press fit in?
Well, the one artist I invited, his name was Cornet. And Cornet, I had been collecting his prints, I think, since I was like 15. And his dealer brought him to Palo Alto because she knew I was really nuts about his work and that I owned a very important painting of his and a lot of other pieces that he had done over these years. And he was shocked that there was someone that knew who he was and what he did, because he's very well known in Europe, but not in the States. And I invited him to work at the press and to do a project, which he did. And it was just, for me, it was heaven. And he, I think, had a pretty good time.
So you were taken by the Cobra movement in Europe, okay? And that was not just paintings, it was also
Prints.
prints.
And drawings.
And so you
And
started,
film.
you started collecting the paintings and some of the prints.
Mm-hmm.
And then where did the printing presses, or the presses
Well,
come
the
in?
presses came. When I initially opened the gallery, the first show was with a Cobra artist, a man who had done films with Pierre d'Outremont, and his name was Jean Rennes, and he was at Berkeley, and I invited him to have his first show, and one of the great artists from the Cobra movement came to that show, and that was Pierre Alashinsky, and he, that was an honor. So he came. That was the first show I did, and no one was interested in it but me.
So, and then what happened?
And then I just, another artist had heard about me in New York, and he flew out, and his name was Adje Junkers. Everybody's dead. Adje Junkers, and his wife is Dory Ashton, and he liked what I was doing, and he said, "Would you show my work?" And I said, "I would love to. I would love to."
Now, were you in the gallery business at that time?
I had opened a gallery because I had been encouraged by the Cobra artist and some other young European artists at that time to open a gallery.
So they sort of sensed you loved art,
yeah.
and you were a collector.
That was my interest. But you scratch a collector, you find a dealer.
Okay, so I don't know how old you are at that particular point of time, but were
35.
you 35? But were you now a 35-year-old who, as a little girl, you always wanted to have a gallery?
No, I had no idea.
What did you want to have when you were a little girl?
I don't know. I just wanted to look at art and see if I could buy some, and I like to do art. I grew up in Boston. I studied in Boston. And after school, I would walk down Newbury Street and stop in galleries, and all the people that owned galleries, they took time and talked to me in those days. I mean, I was just a kid. And they say, "Did you see this show at the museum or that show? And let me show you this drawing." And I don't know. It was just something that happened.
I'm wondering, in your early childhood, did you have parents who were artists? Did you have relatives that were artists?
I had parents, and I had two uncles. And I grew up in a home with these two uncles, a grandfather and a mother and father, and various animals. And my grandfather was very interested in the aesthetics, and particularly music. And so his youngest son was introduced to the piano, and I think his youngest son, who was my Uncle Danny, loved to draw, and I think he really wanted to be a painter or an artist, and most of his friends were painters and artists, so they would come to the house. It was a big house in Boston, and a lot of these young people lived upstairs on the third floor, and there was a lot of activity. There were painters, there were musicians, there were poets. I didn't want to go to school. I wanted to stay home. I wanted to hang out. I was in elementary school in those days. I loved to hear the talk.
Yeah.
And so and my parents would buy a work from one starving artist or another, or clothe them, or do whatever they could do. So I grew up with artists that they won't recognize the name. Hyman Bloom was one of the artists. He was a painter. And my family got a lot of his work. All of it I gave to Stanford. And musicians, one of them was Alan Havanas. He would come and compose music at our piano. It was a very special piano. And then we would have concerts at our home. People would come. And It was
So
a fabulous environment.
it's wonderful that you can have such wonderful memories.
Fabulous.
I think that's very valuable. And apparently those memories were very much of the arts, all different types of it. And it was given to you by loving.
Well, and my uncle, this one uncle, really opened the doors.
And then somehow or another you wound up going to Europe, and you discovered you were drawn by the Cobra
That's right.
crew of artists.
That's right.
Then you came Palo Alto?
I came to Palo Alto in 1956. I came in 1947 to visit artists with my mother and my uncle. And at that time, my uncle, Danny, was living here, and he introduced us to a lot of artists. And I know, God, names nobody would remember today, but I remember my mother buying a couple of pieces, and my uncle very enthusiastic. And then in 1960, we came again. And no, 1950, I was 16. And my uncle had had his portrait done at that time by an artist named Hassel Smith. And my mother and I stayed in Hassel Smith's apartment while he traveled with his wife. And we spent the summer in San Francisco going to museums and galleries and different artist studios. And I just loved it. I loved it.
Okay. And so at some point, would it be safe for me to say some of the great California artists came into your life, like Sam Francis?
Yeah, that was by accident. When I left Boston in 1956, my uncle, another uncle, said, when you get there, look for an artist named Nate Oliveira. Well, I was married at the time, and my ex-husband now was going to law school, so I didn't have time to look at art. I had time I worked, I was a school teacher, and that was life. And we got divorced, and I married a man who was very interested. I met him at a Cobra opening. So we both had this Cobra connection, and he was very interested. And when we married, the first work of art we bought was a Nate Oliveira.
Nate Oliveira.
And we were both interested in Nathan to the point where we purchased every single print he ever did in the 50s.
That's quite interesting. I'm going to come back to him in a little while, but then also there's a Frank Lobdell.
Frank Lobdell, absolutely.
So those are three of
yeah.
artists that, let's say, in the last 30 years are three of the most famous that California has produced.
Yeah, other than Diebenkorn and,
yeah.
you know, David Parks.
Yeah.
You know, David was from Boston, but still he's considered a West Coast artist.
So now with Nathan, and I think with the others, you started making with them monoprints.
Monotypes. With Nathan.
Monotypes.
Nathan, yeah, it was the monotypes.
Yeah.
I thought I had died and gone to heaven when he showed me what he was doing. And so I did a show. And usually, you know, professionally, a gallerist has a show for 1 month. I kept it up for 3 months.
So let me see if I understand this. Harry comes to your studio, and you have a master printmaker.
Right.
And it's Catherine, I believe.
Catherine Kane.
And there's a glass table, maybe?
Well, there is glass table, and there are plastic tables, and there are plexiglass plates and metal plates, and there's and all kinds of papers, And the artist will go and feel and figure out what the artist wants to use, and then he has ideas of colors, and then the master printer will make the colors that artist wants.
Right.
And we don't know what it's going to be until the artist, until Harry gets there.
So after the master printer makes the colors he specifies, and the paint is on the medium?
No. The paint is on a paint, like an easel, like a painter's easel thing. And then they pick it out. The artist says, I'll take that color. And then the artist starts to work with the thing. He does it with a brush, or he does it with a brayer, and he just does his own trip.
Just like he's
so
making...
I'm going to give her the brush, And we're
I'm the
brushed
worst.
together.
That's why I do it. I'm the worst.
Yeah, I know.
So I have such great respect for the artist.
So he paints now as if he's making one of his paintings.
Absolutely, and that is what the monotype is. It is a painter's medium, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful because magic happens.
Yeah. Now, how many copies can you make out of one?
One.
One.
But what you have left on the plate
Yes.
is a ghost image.
Ah.
And you can
you
either
print that also.
You can either print that, or you can look at it and start tweaking it and doing a few things, and then print it. And you can leave ghosts and add more and more and more.
Another version.
It's called reductive printing. It's what Degas did.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's the way Degas
Did Picasso
worked.
do this sort of thing?
Picasso absolutely did
Yes,
monotypes.
yes. In fact, he was very close to his printer. Yeah, he had
That's right.
some excellent words for him. I forget the man's name, but
So
I remember who it was. Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah.
I want to be sure I get this. Harry goes and finishes making the painting, and then he says to your master printer, "Here's my great work," and she lays some kind of paper or something on top of
Whatever
it.
he selects.
And then what happens?
Well, she takes the plate and puts it on the bed of the press.
Yes.
And depending on the size he wants to work, and then that depends on what press he's going to work on.
Oh.
And then the paper is laid on top, and then one press is electric and the other press is a hand press.
So what kind of glass do they use?
Plexiglass.
Plexiglass.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
If you want.
Yeah.
And or you can use metal, copper,
Yeah.
stainless steel, whatever you want. And you just pull it through, and sometimes the master printer will say, "Oh, the ink looks a little thick."
Yes.
My attitude is, to hell with it. Let the ink be thick, because other stuff will happen that you don't expect.
When you use the word pull it through, would I interpret it, the press comes down and squeezes
Yep.
it?
And then you move the wheel, or you press a button.
Move the wheel.
I like the wheel. I like the hand press.
Okay. And then out comes a monotype.
Type. And you pick up the felting, and you pick up the paper, and you look at the plate, and you look at the paper, and you look at the artist, and you say, "Are you ready?"
So let's try another.
It's so exciting. And then you look at the plate, and you look at the piece, and then the piece is wet,
Yeah.
so we let it dry.
So we could do several.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Good.
Oh, it's an immediate.
Yes,
And what it does for a painter, I mean, I hear the painters, like Lobdell when he was doing it, mumbling, "Oh, now I see what I'll do in the studio. Oh, now I got it."
Yes.
And he'd be pulling stuff, and it was amazing. It was amazing.
Several leads.
Yeah.
Leads on
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you said Frank Lobdell, he looks at one of the pulls.
Right.
Okay. And then he said, "Now I got something here, but I can go back to my studio and make a big painting."
Well, he mumbled something about, "Now I know where I'll go in the painting," something, and doesn't verbalize it quite that way, but you get the message that something is going to happen in the studio.
Okay, so Harry pulls one print, one monotype.
Yeah.
And then maybe you put another piece of paper on it.
Maybe if he wants to pull the ghost and see what it
She's
looks
talking
like.
about a ghost,
Do it
yeah.
again.
Sure. And he can hand color the ghost.
Yeah, you can alter
He
it.
can do anything he wants.
Yeah.
And so he could change what's on that plexiglass.
And he can change what's on there. He can do anything he wants. Nobody's going to say. The only thing that might happen is someone may suggest another monotype technique. And would you like to try this, Harry? And either he says, "Yeah, I'll try it," or "No, I don't want. I want to just keep playing this way."
So then, assuming, I mean, I've seen Harry's work. My house is full of it. It's just gorgeous. I know a lot of friends who collect his work also. So then you take some number of these monotypes,
Yep.
and you have a gallery,
Right.
and you put a show on.
Probably the way I always work is I will do an exhibition of work that has been done at the press, because that's what I'm about.
Yes.
And so people come in.
Yeah, but it's not a common kind of gallery. See, yours
No,
is
we're off.
yours is
Yeah, we're off.
It's a very specialized.
But it's okay. We still send out announcements.
Yeah.
We do have a vernissage. People do come. They look at work. There is one museum in the Bay Area that houses our archives. There's another museum in the Midwest that houses archives.
That's right. Yeah.
And every artist that works at Smith Andersen, their work gets into those collections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Wonderful tradition. Yeah.
Before we did the show, when we met a week or two ago, Harry's name came up.
Yeah.
And am I correct? You said he is one of the really important artists who the world has not discovered.
I did say that. I did say that.
And since you have worked with the best, that's quite a
Yeah,
accomplishment.
and it's the time. The time is right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've
Of course, she was drinking.
I wish I drank. You know, but that's my problem. I don't drink.
You don't drink.
No.
okay.
So
I just wonder, I have photos, 3 of Harry's work. Maybe we could show them real quickly, and I don't have a display here, but, and maybe somebody can tell me if you're displaying them or not. Just go the first one, the second one, the third. Okay, we're running out of time. Well, both of you have been wonderful, and I hope it wasn't too much of a surprise for you that Harry
I love it.
joined us. My guest has been Paula Kirkeby, founder of Smith Andersen Editions, somebody who has significantly helped raise the level of art, certainly in the greater Palo Alto area, and certainly beyond, and my guest has also been Harry Cohen, a truly outstanding artist and a dear friend.
Thank you.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.